Uh, but obviously, from what we've all seen in the papers and in news programs, is that the economy obviously played front and center in the minds of many voters. And it kind of reminds me of the early 90s there with a famous Jim Carvell slogan for the Clinton election campaign. It's the economy, stupid. So it's all about the economy. And this evening, we gather to discuss tax policy, obviously a major driver in our economy. And this evening, as we stand here for about to talk about taxes, it appears as if President Trump and his fellow Republicans stand within reach of gaining enough power to extend $4.6 trillion of tax cuts slated to expire, as Kevin mentioned, at the end of 2025. So thank you, Kevin, for organizing this very timely webinar. And as Kevin mentioned, this is food for thought. Obviously, it's going to be a very exciting year coming up in 2025 from a tax policy perspective. There's a lot in play. There is the tax cuts that came about in 2017 that need to be re-upped or otherwise they all expire. We also have had some very serious proposals put on the table by President-elect Trump and also by Vice President Kamala Harris. Assuming the Democrats retain control on the House side, some of her proposals there will fall into these discussions. So what I'd like to do this evening is kind of review the bidding, so to speak, and go through what are these expiring provisions, what took place back in 2017. It was a long time ago, and we just assume that's part of our baseline, but it's not, because this legislation was enacted using reconciliation that these provisions were set to expire here at the end of 2025. So I want to go through what are those $4.6 trillion at stake here if nothing takes place. Secondly, I want to review Kamala Harris's proposals. And finally, I want to walk through now President-elect Trump's proposals. And then once we've got these in mind, I want then to kind of go through and really focus on particular areas that I think we all should keep an eye on in 2025. And I say that because all of us, as we evaluate our tax planning year in, year out, have had a fair amount of stability here. But next year, given the fact that rates could be in effect, and we'll go through all those provisions that could possibly change. So let's just spend a few minutes looking at this chart, okay? And the 2025 column is what we'll all enjoy next year, okay? So there's really nothing to do in terms of year-end planning this year as it relates to the targeted Cuts and Jobs Act, what I'll refer to as TCJA from now on. So there's really nothing for us to do in terms of 2024 planning, but we got to start thinking about it next year. Obviously, what's getting the most press is the top line there, and that is where will the individual income tax rates be? Right now, we'll enjoy for this year and next year a 37% top rate. If the provisions are allowed to expire, that will grow by 2.6%, or going back to a 39.6% top rate. The child tax credit, very near and dear to the hearts of many of the clients I serve at Catholic Charities in my role as director of the Financial Stability Network, will go from $2,000 down back to $1,000. The other dependent care has been very valuable, particularly to our newcomers who, by use of an ITIN, are able to enjoy a $500 dependent credit. The standard deduction, and this is in play here right now. The standard deduction is $30,000 for this year and next year. For married filing jointly, it'd be half that for single. But as you can see in the chart there, it basically gets cut in half starting in 2026. The personal exemption, we don't have them anymore this year or next under the TCJA, but that will go back to new levels or the level of $5,300 assuming that the TJCA expires. The um, the cap on the SALT deduction, that obviously is of great concern to particularly residents of the so-called blue states, where right now their state and local tax deduction is capped at $10,000. If the targeted cut TCJA is allowed to expire, there'll be no longer any cap, which will be good news for people living in the blue states that are affected by very high income taxes and property taxes. And just I'll go through the list real quickly here, the remainder. Charitable contributions right now, the AGI limit is up to 60%. It will revert to 50% in 2026 if nothing takes place. There's a limit on the mortgage interest deductions. You can see in the chart there. There's a series of miscellaneous itemized deductions that were eliminated, such as tax return preparation fees, employee business expenses, investment interest expenses. Those have all been eliminated, but they would be restored. The P's limitation on itemized deductions would be restored, and the AMT exemption, married filing jointly, would be slightly reduced from 140 down to 110. And Kev, just go to the next chart, the one last item. And that is on the estate tax exemption. And again, I just said that the item here for married couples, it'll be basically cut in half. Right now in 2024 and 2025, the estate tax exemption is set at $28.6 million. If the act expires, it reverts back to $14.3 million. So as you can see in the chart there, there's a lot. And Kevin, feel free to put the chart in the chat if people want to have a copy of this. But if you could move now to so the next slide, please. So Kamala Harris, in her 2024 tax proposals, had a lot to say about tax. And she was very serious in raising both individual and corporate taxes. Well, that's not going to happen. Okay. It's not going to happen for two reasons. One, she didn't win the election. And two, that the Republicans now have control of the Senate and they'll be able to block any legislation, even coming over from a Democratic controlled House. And so her attempts to get rid of the low taxes that we currently enjoy, her idea of proposing a billionaire minimum income tax will go by the wayside. But some of her other items may get some light here, and focusing on taxes on tip income. What's interesting is both candidates really saw a lot of injustice associated with paying taxes on tip income. And I see, no matter what legislation takes place next year, that given the fact that both the Democrats and the Republicans want to eliminate taxes on tip income, that may be a front runner here. I'm going to put an asterisk by that, as I am with all of these provisions, because when we get to the analysis here, I do think that there's a big boogeyman out there, and that boogeyman seems to be getting bigger and bigger, and that is the number of deficit hawks. I think are really going to be looking at all these provisions, whether the provisions, going back to 2017 or some of the new starters, such as eliminating taxes on tip income, are really going to look at the impact and what that's going to have on our budget deficit. Kamala Harris also wanted to increase the startup deductions up to $50,000 for new businesses. And as you can see, she wanted to have an increase in capital gains rate. That's not going to take place. But the next item, the child tax credit, there seems to be interest in both the Democrats as well as the Republicans of expanding the child tax credit. Again, that's very good news for the clients that we serve at Catholic Charities, because between the child tax credit and the earned income tax credit for our VITA program, we have a VITA program within the Financial Stability Network. We're able to generate sizable refunds. These are huge asset building techniques for the lower income individuals. I don't see an increase in the net investment income tax taking place. Again, in the EITC, there seems to be a lot of interest in expanding the EITC to permit more EITC for workers who do not have children. Most of the benefit for the earned income tax credit goes to individuals with children, but this would be expanded to include workers without children. And then the Affordable Care Act. She was very interested in having more insurance premium support there. Don't know where that's going to go under a Trump administration. Next slide, please, Kevin. Yeah, another area that there seems to be interest in is by both candidates here is to do something to lower housing costs. And Kamala Harris had a number of provisions here that are included in the chart here. And my sense is that there may be some level of interest in providing more opportunities for those who want to become a first-time home buyer, and a lot of interest in making more affordable housing. There is a huge shortage of affordable housing, both housing that people own as well as rental housing that is driving up the costs. And I think what we're all seeing in the papers is most Americans are suffering from very high housing costs, very high food costs, and I think they're really concerned about their economic well-being because there doesn't seem to be any relief in sight on that. Okay, why don't we move to what the former president had to say, the president-elect now. And these are, again, a number of his proposals that he talked about on the campaign trail. He would like to make all of these targeted cuts and Jobs Act benefits, both on the income tax side as well as the estate tax side, permanent. That's a promise he made in a campaign trail. He knows that these provisions are set to expire the end of what will now be his first year in office, and he wants to address that immediately. Again, we talked about the tip income. He'd also like to eliminate taxes on Social Security benefits. My clients that I serve at Catholic Charities are always amazed that they're paying tax on their Social Security benefits, and it's got a lot of explaining to do why this is being taxed a second time. And the former president also talked about eliminating taxes on overtime pay. Again, these are all nice things to offer out there, but we'll talk later in the session here in the webinar about trying to balance all of these very expensive to the fisc provisions to those that are very interested in looking at our growing deficits. And next year, it's almost become an annual event that Congress once again is going to have to increase our debt ceiling, and I'll talk about that when we get to that part of the discussion here. Home ownership, not much in the way of specifics there, but he talked throughout about promoting more home ownership through tax incentives and providing more support for first-time home buyers. He, in particular, the vice president candidate, J.D. Vance, really wants to expand the child tax credit up to $5,000. And they're talking about providing unpaid family caregivers kind of a tax credit for that. So you can see there's a lot in both Trump's as well as Harris's proposals that may come into play in addition to the these targeted cuts, Jobs Act provisions that are set to expire. So let's talk about what do we need to keep an eye on? What are the key issues and the questions that need to be considered? I think the first question, and the question I get all the time, is which party is going to control the House? And as of 4:45, I did a quick check. CBS is a nice site on this. They're reporting right now that on the House side, that the Republicans are 211, the Democrats are at 203. And of course, as we all know, 218 is that magic number. And it could take days, some are even thinking weeks, before we're going to know the answer to that. And the reason this answer is so critical is because if the Republicans control not only the House, but we all know that they control the Senate and Trump in the White House, that it's very likely that the TCJA will get extended quickly. And I say extended quickly because I think they want to keep that momentum going. I think that they don't want to get caught up in other provisions. I think they want to avoid it getting close to any type of discussion on the debt ceiling and legislation to extend the debt ceiling. So again, if the Republicans can win control of the House, this is just my personal prediction. You'll get predictions all over that the likelihood of them considering this rapidly and having legislation presented to the president as quickly as possible, simply extending. I'm not sure if they're going to make it permanent, but extending it under a reconciliation process. They don't need to have the 60 votes on the Senate side, and they can pass it the same way they did it back in 2017. Again, that's assuming that the Republicans control the House. Now, on the other hand, if the Democrats turn out to get the 218, that's going to be a different ballgame. I think what happens then is the Targeted Cuts Jobs Act, all these expiring provisions, we're not going to know the outcome of that perhaps this time next year. Okay. It's going to take all year long to get some kind of resolution on this because with the Democrats controlling the House, the Republicans controlling the Senate, there's going to have to be some kind of bipartisan compromise on this. They're going to have to reach some middle ground. And so there's going to have to be some give and take on all those provisions in it in order for a bill to be sent to the White House. I think for sure, given the control that the Republicans have on the Senate side, that there won't be any significant tax increases. Okay, but simply taking the 2017 legislation and trying to extend it once again. So within that, what we need to keep an eye on, because I do think that each of the provisions in it will get examined. They'll get examined particularly if the House is controlled by the Democrats. So even on the individual income tax rate side, I think there's going to be a look at that. I think the likelihood of it expanding is pretty minimal, but I suspect that particularly if they get a compromise somewhere, only because anytime there is even a point rate reduction, that the cost involved with that is staggering. And so there's going to be a lot of discussion where they go from 39.6, which will be the default mechanism, all the way back to 37 or some middle ground. The other area, and related to that, I know we're primarily focusing on you as individuals, but I think as you saw yesterday in the stock market, I'm not sure what's going on today, but I do think that big uplift in the stock market just yesterday was a result of their knowing that the corporate rate will probably stay at or around or near the 21% and not go all the way up to 28%, which was the fear if the Democrats control the White House and in Congress. But again, I do think, and the 21% rate, by the way, was made permanent back in 2017. It's not expiring at the end of 2025. But I do think it's very costly. And even on the Republican side, there has been some discussion about is that 21% really a sacred cow or not? So the corporate rate may be in play. I don't know. Hopefully, the child tax credit will stay at $2,000 no matter what, and maybe even in light of the interest in this, will be expanded even more. Again, that is a great relief for those suffering from poverty, particularly in our area. I'm hoping that there is some homeownership proposals there that will emerge from this legislation. The number one financial goal for our clients at the Financial Stability Network is to someday be a first-time home buyer. And face it, given interest rates where they're going and the amount of money that they need to make for a down payment keeps going up and up and up, the values keep going up and up and up. Our clients really need some assistance in support in becoming someday a first-time home buyer. And even though for them it may be 5 years out, they want to retain that dream and that hope, and they work so hard with our financial coaches to improve their credit scores, to improve their budgeting, making sure all the money they're spent is on needs versus wants. But many of the clients we work with want to enjoy this dream of home ownership. And I sure hope, in light of both candidates having interest in this topic, that something will emerge here. The capital gains rate, I think that will probably stay again, assuming that things get extended, that will not move. The estate tax exemption, again, that's caught up in this expiring provision. But again, as you can see, they could extend the entire package as an entire package, or they could kind of pick and choose. And the only reason they may go inside and pick and choose is if they're getting pressure from some of the deficit hawks to look at the otherwise $4.6 trillion is what this is going to cost. I've already mentioned the interest in eliminating the taxes on tips and overtime and Social Security. Again, we don't know what those provisions actually look like. These were just talked about on the campaign trail, but some revenue estimates have got to be established. But they're going to be very, very expensive, particularly if they want to eliminate just income taxes on tip income and, let's say, overtime, but also to impose a restriction or elimination of Social Security taxes on those. And then finally, the big wild card out there is, and this was mentioned by Trump on numerous occasions, is he's seriously looking at having some proposals out there on the nature of tariffs. And he's talking about having perhaps a 10% baseline. He talked about having 60% on Chinese imports. So there's a real question out there in my mind, what role that tariffs will play here. Tariffs could generate some revenue to offset the costs of extending the 2017 legislation. But I think we all need to keep in mind that's out there. So as I mentioned, I want to talk just briefly about what's going to go on next year, no matter what. And that is there's going to be a debate over red ink. And Congress, once again, will need to vote to raise the debt ceiling to add to the current $35.8 trillion of national debt. And just what I've read and have seen and talking to my colleagues at Price Waterhouse, that the voice and the size of the deficit hawks seems to be growing. And I do think that consideration of what that debt will be, we know where we borrow the money to cover this, and that's not a good outcome. And so I think that's the real wild card out there is to what will put more pressure on having this be a free-for-all in terms of adopting all these tax cuts. So in any event, I wanted to wrap up there. And as Kevin mentioned, I'm sure you've got a lot of questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. Again, I can't promise that I'm right, but I'll give you my best guess. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Deacon Jim. That was great. Just in case anyone does have questions, you'll need to unmute your microphone. One question that I did get before the start of the program, and I'm not sure if it was touched upon, but the annual gift tax exclusion, is that something, when you're allowed to give five, 10, or $15,000 gift to a child, a grandchild, a family member, is that impacted? Does that fall under this?
Let me take a quick look at that. I don't I have my what I did is I actually dug up my charts from the 2017 to go through because this is a massive bill, right? I mean,
Mhm.
there was a lot in there. And let me just see if I can pull up that chart while we're talking here because it was one of my favorite books that talked about that. Let me see.
But certainly, if anyone in the audience has a question to share, either, unmute your microphone or use the chat feature to be able to share that.
Yeah, were there other questions in the it was I'm looking for my little chart here that came through the chat line.
No, you answered one already with respect to the tax rate on capital gains.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can't find it in my handy side by side, Kevin. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah,
That's
I mean,
okay.
just going back to 2017 was going back to memory lane, but I tried to pull up most of the ones that I'm getting a lot of questions on, at least in terms of tax planning. Yeah.
Sure.
Yes, Scott.
Okay.
I had a question. So on the tariffs that Trump's talking about, any idea how much revenue that would generate for the country or or I mean, he talks about that, but I have never heard any numbers associated with
Yeah,
that.
yeah, Scott. I've not seen any revenue estimates because there's going to be it's going to be obviously like a tax. We know that's going to be collected there, but what's the impact of that on the consumer and on consumer spending, and what's going to be the impact on the overall GDP? And so there are two sides to that equation. You know, a lot of us are enjoying low cost goods that are manufactured, let's say in China, and that is in helping a lot of people obviously stay within their means. But if all of a sudden products that are manufactured in China because they're not yet manufactured here, if all of a sudden those costs go up for staples that people are purchasing at one of the big box stores. I've not seen those numbers, Scott, but that's a very good question as to whether this will be a net revenue raiser or a loser.
Yeah, because then anything that actually is manufactured in the US currently will have tariffs have no effect.
That's right. That's right.
So, and it would encourage more companies to try and manufacture in the US,
Right, right. And there's been
which,
proposals of having even a lower tax rate for those that are manufacturing, Scott, here in the United States. One of the proposals that I know that President-elect Trump talked about is having a new 15% corporate rate for companies that make products here in the United States. Right now, there's a so-called 199 deduction. There's a kind of a special deduction for that. But again, there is a lot of interest in bringing more manufacturing on shore, which I think I'm very much in favor of that. But that's going to take time to pull those manufacturing jobs from other countries back into the United States. And so, meanwhile, the consumer, why this transition takes place, will be caught in the middle here.
right. Yeah. Okay.
So there may be some pushback on the whole notion of this tariff, given the globalized nature of the world we live in.
Right.
Yeah, but the idea of bringing more manufacturing jobs back into the United States, I'm very much in favor of that. I mean, we need to provide more jobs. And I just see that. Well, Scott always Scott is one of our volunteers at the Financial Stability Network. He leads our financial education program, and yeah, Scott, as you know, when we're working with our clients in the area here, the number of entry level jobs that pay well that you would have in kind of a manufacturing sector just are very few and far between.
Yeah, yeah. The service sector or nothing
Yeah, exactly.
in this area.
Hmm.
That, that's great. Anyone else with any questions? All right. Um, this is Deacon Jim's contact information. If you would like to ask him any questions about what you heard this evening or learn a little bit more about the Financial Stability Network, this is how you can contact him. But what I wanted to do was I just wanted to give you some general information. From time to time, people ask us about volunteer opportunities. We have multiple volunteer opportunities at Catholic Charities. Some have longer ongoing commitments. Others are, I'll coin it as a one and done. You know, for instance, we do a host of food distributions and food packagings, whether it's here in the district, whether it's in Montgomery County, whether it's in Southern Maryland. The first Tuesday of the month, up at the Montgomery County Family Center on Georgia Avenue in Silver Spring, between 9:30 and 12 noon. There's food distributions. One Wednesday a month at our Spanish Catholic Center at 9:30 in the morning, although I'm trying to get clarification as to which Wednesday that is, the first or the second Wednesday. Speaking of Wednesdays, every Wednesday night, outside of Catholic Charities' main offices here on G Street downtown, between 4:15 and 6:15 p.m., St. Maria's Meals distributes a hot meal to our clients who might not have the ability to get a hot meal. Every Thursday down in Landover at our Share Food Network, we have food projects. That's packaging different items, whether they're perishable or dry good items, but putting them together for future distribution. So Thursdays from 10 to 2, the fourth Friday of the month from 9 to 11 a.m. And then Saturdays, we also have some opportunities there, whether it's 7 to 10 a.m. on the second and third Saturdays of the month, or for you early birds on the fourth Saturday of the month, 5 to 10 a.m. On Catholic Charities website, you can click on the Get Involved section and look for ways to volunteer. And that's where you can drill down, get more information, and actually sign up to volunteer for any of those food distribution and packaging opportunities. We also have mentoring opportunities. Some of these are in person, some of these are virtual. For instance, the Financial Stability Network. Deacon Jim, would you like to just talk just briefly about what volunteers would be doing with respect to participating in that?
I'd be happy to. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, well, firstly, the Financial Stability Network, the program I direct, it's all volunteer driven. Okay, it's like Scott Parr, who chimed in earlier. So within the Financial Stability Network, our goal is like our North Star is economic justice for all. And so we help the clients of Catholic Charities. These are individuals who are members of our Compass program or are returning citizens in the Welcome Home Reentry program, or those suffering from housing insecurity. All of the various clients that we serve in Catholic Charities, if there's an interest, we provide them financial education. That's the program that Scott leads. We provide them a one-on-one financial coach to basically implement what they've learned in the classroom. And then we also provide during tax season free tax return preparation. It's very sad, but in many parts of Southeast DC, there are for-profit tax preparers there charging lots of money to prepare a 20-minute tax return. And we encourage those clients to come into our VITA program. It's an IRS blessed program to prepare their taxes for free. So if you have if you're comfortable with home economics, if you're comfortable with and just sitting down and helping someone with their budgeting, we really need you as a mentor. If you'd like to talk and would like to be in a classroom and want to talk about a variety of topics. Last night I led a whole class on money values and influences. Scott, in his program, we've got the Money Smart series with the FDIC we use. And then finally, in the mentoring, it's really, to use a Pope Francis line, this is the art of accompaniment. Some of these individuals need help in just kind of navigating through what I call the business part of life. And so would be happy to talk with any one of you about what we do and what these opportunities are. And you've got my contact information there. And thank you, Kevin, for giving me time to make an advertisement here.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
Kevin, can I jump in here one thing? This was one of the impacting things I've found is this when we taught a class, this was in December, the fall of 2022. And so, but in there it says we had this update of one of the men who graduated spoke at the ceremony and expressed his gratitude to the program. In his words, quote, "It showed me what I can do, and I know what's out there. I look forward to 2023 because the possibilities are endless."
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is you're opening doors to people's lives. And that's really what Jim's talked about. That's what we're able to do through this mentoring program, the education and tax. So,
Yeah. Thanks, Scott.
that's great. Thank you. And similarly, when we're talking about mentors, and Deacon Jim mentioned this, the Welcome Home Reentry Program, which is helping citizens who have served their time in prison and are re-entering the community. So we're giving them guidance and a positive support network so that they can connect to training and other resources so that they have an easier time integrating back into the community, because that is a very life-changing experience going from one to the other. So that's another opportunity that's available for those who might be interested. When you're on our website, you could either do one of two things. You can click on the green volunteer button, or you can go up here where it says get involved. Click on that. This window will show up and you can choose ways to volunteer. And that way you can learn more about the opportunities, whether the food distribution, financial stability network, or Welcome Home Reentry, and even some other ones. As I said, we have a host of one and dones as well as longer term commitments, depending upon what your interest is and what your time frame is like. We also have networking societies. This might be something of interest for your children or grandchildren. We have, two opportunities. One, the Ensler Society, believe it or not, named after Monsignor John Ensler, who was very much involved, a longstanding leader and doer for Catholic Charities. The Ensler Society looks to engage young adults in the 21 to 35 age group, doing that through different volunteer services, community networking, but really it's an opportunity to raise awareness about Catholic Charities and the impact that it has within the community. The 8333 Society, well, that's a little bit older audience. Think of that group as age 35 to 50, 55. These people, believe it or not, some of them got their start in the Ensler Society, getting involved in volunteer activities and networking, but they wanted to take a step further and become invested socially in the Washington area community with some of its top emerging leaders and looking at making a difference through collaboration in volunteering, fundraising, and philanthropy. So both of those opportunities are open if you wanted to share that information, as I said, with your children or grandchildren. The easiest way to do that. Similarly, you can go back to our website on the top main bar, click on Get Involved, and under Giving Communities, you can learn more about those particular opportunities. Finally, I just want to say thank you to our presenter, Deacon Jim. Assistant help with there from Scott Parr, but all of you good folks being a part of this. The Good Samaritan Society sponsors these opportunities. It's an opportunity for anyone to become a member. And it's as simple as just making a future gift intention to Catholic Charities, whether it's a gift through your will, making a beneficiary designation in an investment account or life insurance, or establishing a life income gift. It's a gift that you don't pay up now, it comes much later. If you're interested in learning more, or if you had thought about these intentions and wish to let us know, reach out. That would be great. One of the things that we do annually is that we have a mass and a brunch celebration, generally in the spring. Father John normally has celebrated those masses. We've held them at St. Bartholomew's in Bethesda. And then afterward, we go downstairs and have a nice hot brunch and some good camaraderie. So if you're interested, that's there. If you have any questions, as I said, please, with respect to the topic tonight, contact Deacon Jim Shanahan. We'll send this information out so that you can have it handy. But if you have any questions about volunteer opportunities or making a future plan gift, you can contact me directly, and I'd be able to answer your questions and put you in touch with the right individuals to get those questions answered. So, on behalf of Catholic Charities, thank you for all that you do. Thank you for your interest in helping the less fortunate. You do have an impact in the community, and it's great. We wouldn't be able to do what we can do without your support and your participation. So everyone, have a great rest of your evening and hope to hear from you soon. Deacon Jim, thank you again.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right. All the
Good night,
best,
everybody.
everyone.